Have you ever, actually stopped to think about where your safety nets are tied? I mean, physically tied.
Physically kind, right?
Yeah, say you're setting up a literal safety net for a trapeze act. You would never, ever attach all four corners of the net to the exact same wooden pole.
No, of course not. Because if that one pole
This
snaps,
whole net comes down with you in it, you're done.
exactly, you'd want those anchor points spread out like
Yes.
as far geographically as possible. You need that structural redundancy so that, one failure doesn't just mean total catastrophic failure.
Right. But the crazy thing is, when it comes to our financial lives, most of us are essentially tying our entire safety net to a single pole.
Oh, totally. We absolutely do.
We've got our savings account in our local bank, our real estate is in our local town, our job depends entirely on the local economy. Even our investments are in local businesses.
Yeah, so if the local economy sneezes, your entire financial life basically catches a cold.
Exactly. And that brings us to what we're talking about today. Welcome to the deep dive. We are exploring this really fascinating set of personal reflection notes from an investor who had a massive realization about this exact blind spot.
Such a great set of notes, too.
It really is. And our mission today for you, the listener, is to understand how we can build true financial resilience by basically stepping outside our home country's economic bubble.
Yeah, so the source material we are looking at today, it's a personal narrative from an investor based in Indonesia. And it details their mental and practical progression from, holding very familiar local assets, things you can physically see and touch to, eventually gaining global exposure using US ETFs.
Which is a huge jump.
It's massive. It's really as much a psychological evolution as it is a financial one.
Yeah, and we're going to begin exactly where the author began, which was honestly in a state of feeling pretty secure.
Right, they weren't panicking at the start.
Not at all. According to their notes, this investor started out feeling quite comfortable with familiar local assets. So we're talking about things like gold and foreign exchange, or velas, as it's referred to locally there.
Favelas, right?
Yeah, they had this system that just made total sense to them.
Well, I mean, you start with what you know, right? Gold has been this universal store of value for basically all of human history.
Sure.
And holding physical foreign currency, like literally stacking US dollars or euros in a physical safe, it provides a very tangible hedge against your own currency's fluctuation.
I guess it's right there.
Exactly. You can hold the gold in your hand. You can send out the paper money. It feels incredibly safe because it is physically proximate to you.
Okay, wait, I have to push back a little bit here, maybe on behalf of anyone listening who might be in a similar comfortable position, because, I mean, if I have physical gold in my safe and cash under my mattress, I feel secure.
Sure, yeah.
So why look outward and complicate things? Why fix a local system that isn't fundamentally broken?
See, what's fascinating here is that the author wasn't actually looking for complication at all.
They weren't.
No, in fact, they were actively trying to avoid it.
Yeah.
What they were experiencing wasn't, a desire for complexity, but rather this slow awakening to the limitation of a single market.
Okay, how so?
Well, if you only invest in one country, your maximum potential upside is just hard capped by the economic growth of that specific country.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if that nation goes through, say, a decade of stagnation, your portfolio just stagnates with it. It doesn't matter how clever you are with your local asset allocation.
Okay, let's unpack this. So you are basically artificially limiting your playing field.
Pretty much.
It's like feeling like a champion playing in a local sports league and then suddenly looking up and realizing the Olympics exist.
That's a perfect way to put it.
Yeah.
And recognizing that boundary is really the very first step to crossing it.
Right.
The author realized that while their local strategy wasn't broken per se, it was inherently limited. I mean, global economic growth was happening around the clock. In industries and markets they just had zero exposure to.
We're missing out.
Exactly. They weren't participating in the broader story of human economic progress. They were only participating in their local chapter.
But, recognizing a boundary and deciding to actually cross it are two very different things.
Oh, completely.
Because once this investor actually looked over that fence, they didn't just casually start buying up foreign assets. They hit this massive psychological wall of intimidation.
Yeah, and the notes are wonderfully transparent about this part. The initial hesitation they felt wasn't just minor anxiety. It was severe paralysis.
Here's where it gets really interesting. They write about how incredibly weird it felt to send money abroad to buy assets they had, quote, never seen directly.
Which makes total sense if you think about it.
It does. Think about this from just a basic human perspective for a second. Imagine taking, I don't know, 3 months of your hard-earned salary, converting it into a totally different currency, and then clicking send to wire it to some brokerage platform in another time zone.
It's terrifying.
Right. There is no physical receipt handed to you. There's no branch manager down the street you can go yell at if something goes wrong. It honestly feels like you're launching your life savings into a digital void.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, humans are biologically and culturally wired to trust local familiarity.
Right, the village mindset.
Exactly. We evolved in these small groups where trust was established through physical proximity and observable behavior. Like, I
Oh,
know the
yeah.
person who owns the local bank, or I can see the gold in my safe.
I can walk past the real estate I invested in.
Yes. When you remove that physical proximity, your brain's threat detection system just goes into absolute overdrive.
So it's not even just a fear of the unknown stock market, it's a fear of the medium itself. Which is funny, right? Because we don't think twice about pulling out our phones and buying a physical product from across the globe. Like, we'll order a gadget from an overseas manufacturer, pay in our local currency, and just trust that it will show up on our doorstep.
Yeah, we do that every day.
But when it comes to the psychological distance of investing abroad, we are terrified of the invisible asset, trusting your money to something you can't physically touch.
And, that fear is really compounded by the mechanics of currency, which the author explicitly points out.
Oh, the currency risk.
Right. They acknowledged that stepping into a U.S. dollar-based market meant exposing themselves to foreign exchange fluctuations on top of the asset price fluctuations.
Okay, wait, let me make sure I understand the mechanics of that because that sounds like a double-edged sword.
It really is.
So if I'm an Indonesian investor, right?
Yeah.
And I'm using rupiah to buy a US stock, if the stock goes up, but the US dollar weakens against the rupiah, I could still theoretically lose money when I convert it back to my local currency.
That is the exact mathematical reality that just terrifies new global investors.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you suddenly have two moving variables instead of one. Your asset price is moving, and the conversion rate of your currency is moving at the same time.
That sounds exhausting to track.
It is. And a less reflective investor might just blindly throw money at some trendy foreign stock because they heard about it on social media, completely ignoring this currency risk.
Yeah.
But this author actually stopped and cataloged their fears.
Which is smart.
Very smart. They acknowledged the fear of making a mistake, the fear of not understanding the risks, and honestly, the ultimate fear of losing money purely due to their own ignorance of these complex mechanics.
Being paralyzed by that math makes total sense. I mean, nobody wants to lose money because they simply didn't understand the rules of the game.
Nobody.
The author felt totally overwhelmed by the prospect of having to suddenly become, like, an expert in the U.S. market, U.S. regulations, foreign currency hedging, and doing fundamental analysis of foreign companies.
But sitting in that fear just wasn't an option for them anymore. The author realized that being paralyzed by the unknown was honestly just as risky as staying entirely in their local currency. They needed a bridge, something that didn't require a Wall Street degree to cross.
Which is where they discovered this tool that completely bypassed the need to be an expert in foreign markets.
Yes.
They didn't go back to school for finance. They found the ETF, the Exchange Traded Fund.
This is such a pivot point in the narrative. The author learns that despite the initial intimidation of the global market, the mechanism to actually access it is incredibly elegant.
The notes point out that the turning point was realizing that ETFs are not these opaque, complex instruments, but actually brilliantly simple.
So simple.
The author specifically gravitated toward US ETFs, and they mentioned two absolute heavyweights by name, VTI and QQQ.
Right, two classics.
And their core motivation here is what I find so relatable. The author explicitly stated they did not want to be busy picking dozens of individual stocks one by one.
Who has the time?
Exactly. They didn't want to spend their evenings reading quarterly earnings reports of foreign companies in a second language. They just wanted to own a small piece of global economic growth simply and gradually.
It's the ultimate delegation of cognitive load.
Oh, I like that phrase.
Yeah. By utilizing an ETF, you are shifting your investment thesis from, I know which specific company will win, to, I believe the system as a whole will grow.
So instead of trying to blindly pick the single winning horse in a foreign race you know nothing about. You're just buying a tiny slice of the entire racetrack.
That's a great way to put it.
Or it's like, instead of trying to guess which single artist is going to have the #1 hit song this summer, you are basically just buying the entire Spotify Top 100 playlist.
Exactly.
You don't care if track 4 drops down to track 12, or if some new artist bumps someone else entirely off the list. As long as human beings continue to consume music, your playlist holds its value.
That's the exact dynamic.
But how does buying a single ticker actually solve the fear of ignorance and the currency fears we just talked about earlier? Like, mechanically, how does that work?
Well, it solves it by distributing the risk so widely that individual corporate failures become statistically insignificant to your portfolio.
Okay, break that down for me.
Sure, let's look at the specific roles of the ETFs the author mentioned, VTI and QQQ. So VTI is the Vanguard Total Stock Market ETF. By buying just one share of VTI, you are effectively buying a micro-slice of nearly every publicly traded company in the United States.
Wait, really?
Yes, thousands of companies.
Wait, so if I buy VTI, I own a piece of, like, a random US waste management company, a regional bank in Ohio, a giant tech firm. Doesn't that mean I'm basically buying the losers along with the winners?
You are. You absolutely are. But
Yeah.
you are also guaranteeing that you own the companies that will drive 90% of the market's growth. And those winners are often completely impossible to predict in advance. So you're buying the macro trend of the U.S. economy rather than betting on micro execution.
That makes a lot of sense. And what about QQQ?
Right, so QQQ, the Invesco QQQ Trust, tracks the NASDAQ 100. This is heavily weighted toward the largest, most innovative technology companies in the world.
Okay, so QQQ is less about the whole U.S. economy and more of a proxy for global technological advancement.
Exactly.
So the author recognized that they didn't need to, pick the next winning software company. They just needed to own the basket of companies that are building the digital infrastructure of the world.
And this directly addresses those currency fears we talked about, too.
Oh, how so?
The author realized that while they couldn't control or deeply understand a single foreign company, they could trust the aggregate trajectory of global economic and technological growth.
Right.
Holding a USD-denominated asset that represents global tech provides this massive anchor against local inflation. If the local currency devalues, the intrinsic global value of those tech companies doesn't change.
Right. It just means the local currency buys less of them. Wow. So the fear of making a mistake by picking the wrong stock is neutralized by just buying all of them.
Yes.
And the fear of not understanding the risks is mitigated because the risk is now distributed across thousands of the most rigorously regulated and audited companies on the planet. The ETF was literally the bridge over their wall of intimidation.
It really was. And once those mechanics were solved, the author experienced this profound philosophical shift. This is where we transition from the mere mechanics of investing to the actual mindset of resilience.
Yeah, the psychology of it.
Exactly. The author writes that the biggest change after discovering ETFs was how they view the entire concept of country risk.
This part of the notes really struck me, actually. They realized that previously almost all their assets depended entirely on the Indonesian rupiah and the Indonesian economy.
Everything was tied to that one pull.
Right. Their job was there, their cash was there, their physical gold was priced in local currency terms. But now they have exposure to a USD-based economy and global companies. But they are very, very explicit about this one clarification. This diversification is not because they don't trust Indonesia.
And that distinction is absolutely critical. This raises an important question about how we view foreign investment. The shift from viewing outward investment as, like, a rejection of the local economy to instead viewing it as an embrace of structural balance, that is a massive leap in financial literacy.
So what does this all mean for the average person? Because let's play devil's advocate and look at the emotional side of this.
Okay, sure.
Taking capital out of your home country can feel really wrong to a lot of people. Does investing abroad mean you are betting against your home country? It can sometimes feel like a lack of patriotism to move your money out.
Right, like you're abandoning ship.
Yeah, taking hard-earned capital out of a developing economy like Indonesia just to fund Silicon Valley tech giants. Shouldn't you be investing in your own backyard to help your own community grow?
That tension is very real, and it is a huge hurdle for many investors who genuinely want to support their local communities. But we really have to look at the mechanics of a localized crisis.
Okay.
Think back to your trapeze safety net analogy from the beginning.
The one pole.
Right. If you invest 100% of your assets in your home country, and your home country experiences a localized crisis, say, um, severe natural disaster, political instability, or just a massive spike in localized inflation,
Yeah.
your entire financial foundation is compromised at the exact moment you might need liquidity the most.
Right. Your local bank might freeze withdrawals, or your local real estate might become totally illiquid. You can't sell a house in the middle of a crisis.
Precisely. So by allocating a portion of your portfolio globally, you're actually making yourself a more resilient citizen.
Oh, that's an interesting way to frame it.
Think about it. If a local crisis hits, the investor who has global assets can liquidate those USD-denominated ETFs, bring that capital back home when it is desperately needed, and use it to support their family, rebuild their business, or inject capital back into their community.
Wow.
They have preserved their purchasing power on a global scale, specifically so they can deploy it locally when it matters.
Mm.
It has nothing to do with distrust. It is entirely about structural balance.
Okay, it's kind of like having a solar panel on your roof, but also remaining connected to the main city power grid.
Oh, I love that.
Right, like you love the independence and the local generation of your solar panel, but you want the backup of the grid just in case it rains over your house for a week straight. You aren't betting against the sun, you're just acknowledging that weather happens.
That is a perfect analogy. The author points out that having this exposure to global technology and a USD-based economy simply provides them with a deep sense of balance and peace.
Which is priceless.
It is. The anxiety of being overly concentrated in one currency just evaporates. And that actually frees them up to focus on their actual life and career locally without constantly worrying about systemic risk.
So to bring this all together for you listening, we've walked through a really remarkable personal evolution today. We saw an investor start in the comfort of physical, local assets, gold and currency you can literally hold in your hand.
Very tangible stuff.
Yeah, and they were perfectly content, but fundamentally limited by the borders of their home economy.
Then we explore that wall of intimidation, the visceral fear of wiring money into the digital void, the fear of the invisible asset, and all that paralyzing mathematics of currency risk.
And then we saw how they bypassed that wall entirely, not by becoming like a Wall Street analyst or some day trader, but by discovering the simplicity and elegance of ETFs like VTI and QQQ.
Right, buying the entire playlist.
Exactly. They realized they could buy the entire playlist of human economic progress instead of trying to guess the next hit song. And ultimately, they achieved a state of true financial resilience by redefining country risk. They finally understood that diversifying away from a single point of failure isn't a betrayal of their home, but actually a necessary step to protect it.
And honestly, that transition from local dependence to global participation, it's a blueprint for anyone looking to build a more robust financial foundation.
It really is. The author summarizes this entire paradigm shift in one beautifully simple concluding thought in their notes, and I want to read it verbatim. They wrote, "Opportunities are not always limited to the country where we live."
I love that. And, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over based on that exact idea.
Okay, let's hear it.
So this investor's journey was all about expanding their geographic horizons to mitigate risk, right? They moved from Indonesian assets to US-based ETFs to gain global exposure. But as we look at the companies inside an ETF like QQQ, the massive tech giants that basically provide the digital infrastructure for the entire planet, we have to ask ourselves something about the near future.
What's that?
Will the very concept of a domestic versus a foreign company soon become completely obsolete?
Oh, wow.
I mean, think about it. If a tech company is technically headquartered in the US, but 80% of its revenue comes from overseas, its servers are distributed across 30 different nations, and its workforce is completely remote. Is it really a US company anymore?
That's a really good question.
Right. And if borders truly disappear in the corporate world, how will that change where you draw the lines for your own financial safety nets?
That is a wild thought to end on, because if the poles holding up our safety nets are moving, we need to be paying very, very close attention to where we tie our knots. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. Keep questioning your assumptions, keep exploring those invisible assets, and we will see you next time.